afternoon. We are on socialist thought, negation of feudalism or capitalism? Question mark. Okay. How y'all doing? I'm so pressed. But this is not the channel for me to talk about me being pressed. So let me shut my mouth. Just as the historical character of capitalist development in the working class is associated with the development... just as the historical character... Do you need to be closer? Are you too far from me? Can you hear me? It's okay. We're good. We're fine. Much better. I feel like I'm yelling. Just as the historical character of capitalist development in the working classes associated with that development can be better understood through the medieval civilization in which they were created. A similar task applies to the history of socialism. If we want to look at the history of capitalism, it's saying we got to look at the history of socialism in medieval Europe. I mean, medieval civilization. That's what that said. That's what that said to me. No, I'm actually grateful for rereading this. Oh, that was going to be my complaint. I'm so pressed that I was going through burnout and a friend breakup and this and that. And then watching like my whole entire perspective of the Western world completely shift upside down. I was going through an existential crisis while I was reading this book and going to class and trying to show up, girl, and I had a freaking allergic reaction, girl, and I didn't get to comprehend this book as well as I should have back then, but I'm grateful to be rereading it now. That's my ending thing. The roses and the KTS, I love you. There's this group called Kwame Ture Society, and they would ask, what are your roses and a thorn, or your thorns and a rose? And my thorns have been all this stuff. And then the rose is getting to reread and graduate. Yeah. I want to go back. I want to do that again. I know I can do better. Now that I'm back in my body, in my feet, behind my eyes type, and not like in survival mode. And then, the rose of it is the result and the stuff that I've learned and this and that, and there's good and bad and beautiful and life. Let me stop. Thanks for letting me go off on my tangent. Socialism as an articulated opposition to social inequality and poverty was first... Oh, I was so wrong about my TikTok. Well, it was a critique on the system, but I should delete that. I can remake information and be correct. Thank you for rereading. Let me make a note of that, though, so I don't forget. Well, it was this critique on the system as a whole, because not only has homeless, like, people feeding the homeless, they've gotten tickets, because why is feeding the homeless, like, illegal? Like, people experiencing houselessness, unemployment, like, why shouldn't food be free? Why can't we share and care? Like, that makes no sense. Like, we was raised on sharing is caring, and it was critiquing the system as a whole, but I don't want to say the wrong words and be wrong. I can delete the TikTok. Excuse me. Thank you for letting me verbally process. Socialist critiques of society were attempts to further the bourgeoisie revolutions against feudalism. Well, yeah, I was right, but I didn't explain why I was right, so maybe I should say why I was wrong. But I did add... Girl, we'll come back. It possessed then a moral character. The critique of property that arose with the liberalism of 18th century France was not geared to the industrial system at all. Aside from advocating that private property be eliminated, it had no economic orientation. Rather, the concerns of such a characteristic communist thinker of the era as morally was entirely moral. Morally, Morelly, was entirely moral. And the abolition of private ownership was for him. Oh, well, it was a critique on the system because the schools was like, get off, we send the police. But I should have explained that instead of just yapping. Girl, that's my problem. I just start yapping and yapping and yapping. But I'm grateful to be able to realize that because it's good to be able to reflect and be wrong and learn anew. Oh, I want to do college again so I can do it correctly. Like some of my classes, because now I'm thinking about some of my essays that could have been so much better. Life was life, and bro. And the abolition of private ownership was for him simply the focal point of a rationalized social and political structure that would then bring about the moral regeneration of man. So I was technically right, but I should have explained that and then given examples. That's what I need to start doing more of. Explaining the concept, then examples, rather than my little tangents. And I should write stuff down before I start talking. Sorry. And we're at 6 minutes. Okay. I thought I'd been talking too much, but I low-key have been. As Marx and Engels most made obvious, the Communist Manifesto as pole mystics, their intention was to emphasize their difference with those social traditions that had preceded them, not to identify with them. They was like, they not like us, the other social movements. We're different. We're special. The socialism with which they were contemporaries were generally frowned in the attempt to distinguish and preserve the rights of property bourgeoisie from the wrongs of property. And then the original socialism is supposed to be no one has private property. It's not ours. It's the land. We don't own it. We live on it. That's what I'm getting. That the original socialism was a critique of the ownership of private property. And then Marx and Engels' socialism was them being like, we're not like them. They wanted to distinguish and preserve the rights of property, the bourgeoisie, from the wrongs of property, feudalism. And feudalism, okay. Socialism was an expression of the social and intellectual liberation and enlightenment of strata of European societies for which the terrors of feudalism and the power of the absolute state were no longer natural, immediate, or inevitable. Oh, so they was like, we still have private property, but the hierarchies of feudalism, like, you know how, okay, so in feudalism they had higher orders, the ones on top, and then the lower orders, the ones on the bottom. The ones on the bottom, they was doing like poor jobs like slavery, serfdom, peasantry, whatever, right? And they had a poor quality of life, and they didn't get all the riches, but they was working to make the absolute power, absolute state richer. And those aren't natural. That's what they're saying. They're trying to critique the feudalism at hand. Okay. As an ideology committed to the historical and providential force. I should have done this when I was reading the book the first time. Whatever. I have a lot of thoughts. I'm a Gemini moon, y'all. I try to stop, but it's floating in my brain and it has to come out. As an ideology committed to the historical and providential force of science, reason, and rationality, and that's where we get into the Anglo-Saxon mindset too. Those are the some of the characteristics of Anglo-Saxonism, like reason versus over emotion, like objectivity over subjectivity, or self-control, emotional control. Yeah. It was largely an obviation of these ideologies and structures that had served to legitimate the manifold forms of feudal and imperial authority, caste hierarchies, aristocratic privilege, the absolute power of the prince, later the state. Oh, okay, so that's where the distinguish is. Let's make a little note. Over the peasantry, the authority and wealth of the church, and finally the property and powerless of the masses. Well, I was correct in that sense then. I should have explained that though, because that wouldn't make sense without the background information. That's what I need to learn. That's my goal for, in general. First, communicate, because typically my papa was like, you just have a stream of consciousness in your paper sometimes. And I'm like, I know, that's my problem. I mean, no. And so I have to like always re-edit, yada, yada, yada. But in general, I need to start providing the concept, the information. Like, you know, in an essay, you do like a thesis statement. The first essay is this thesis, evidence, interpretation. That's a paragraph. Oh my God. The cause to which early socialism was addressed was the freeing of the secularized soul, the highest point attained by contemplative materialism, that is materialism that which does not comprehend what's this word? La di da di da 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 di da da. The quality of affecting or relating to the physical sense. Okay. Pronunciation. Por favor. Sensualism. So then what? Sensuousness. Okay. They don't have a pronunciation. Sensuousness. So relating to the physical. As practical activity is the contemplation of single individuals in a civil society, quote unquote civil society. Okay, To accept the notion so frequently put forth that early socialist thought was the ideological and theoretical negation of capitalist society, industrial capitalism. Oh, so I was wrong. Well, technically, I was wrong. I should delete that TikTok. To accept that I was right in the moment, but I was wrong then. I'm wrong now. Well, I was wrong then, but I'm realizing how I'm wrong now. It's okay to be wrong. Because I don't want to be walking around. Why does no one tell me, girl, you're wrong? Please, tell me when I'm wrong. I'll delete it later. I don't want to be on my phone that much. To accept the notion so frequently put forth, it's like, girl, read that sentence again, you know? The early socialist thought was the ideological and theoretical negation of capitalist society. Industrial capitalism during the stages of competitive and monopoly capitalism was to presume a historical relationship that is not in the evidence. I was wrong. I was full on wrong. I'm funny. Oh, that's a good thing, though. It's good to be able to... I need people... I mean, I'm supposed to tell that's individualistic. Sometimes I need my sisters to tell me I'm wrong. I'll be like, this is what I said. And they'll be like, girl, what? And I'm like... And they're like, no, girl. You was wrong. I'm not going to lie to you, babe. I'm so glad that... Okay, a lot of people did kind of see that, actually. Oh, well. Delete. Because now I can correct myself and be correct. The question arises whether the economic interpretation of history is more than a convenient approximation which must be expected to work less satisfactorily in some cases than it does in others. An obvious qualification occurs on the outset. Social structures, types, and attitudes are coins that do not readily melt. Oh, but the social structures stayed the same, is what they're saying? Okay. Dang. It's okay that I'm wrong. It's just that I hate being wrong and then too many people saying that. Because then I'm like, well, it's not that big of a deal. It's more about, I don't want to be saying I mean, girl, I'm wrong. Sorry, this is so long. This is my mental this is why it takes me a long time to do anything, because I'm going over my head so much. Once they are formed, they persist, possibly for centuries, and since different structures and types display different degrees of this ability to survive, we almost always find that actual groups and national behavior more or less depart from what we should expect it to be if we try to infer from the dominant forms of the productive process. Such facts Marx did not overlook, but he hardly realized all their implications. The initial appearance of modern socialism and its forms are more closely related to feudal society than is suggested by later shapes. Okay, yeah, I was wrong. Well, I think I did say feudal society, but I don't know. I need to go back and look at it. Socialism began as an expression of the bourgeoisie society and the bourgeoisie that it came to oppose explicitly. The materialist historicism of socialism is thus mistaken. The nature of socialism. Why? Oh, because it's girl. The nature of socialism is which scholars like George Litcham had devoted so much attention is a philosophical, ideological construct, an interpretation of the history of socialist thought that fixes on the variant of the tradition which was a response to the revolutionary failures of the mid-19th century. Okay. Highlighted. I don't typically read out loud, but I've been practicing sometimes because I used to have a stutter when I was younger because I just trip over my words a lot. And then I do it sometimes when I'm like really nervous. One time I almost threw up. I should keep more secrets to myself. Combined with the persistent thrust of Marx's materialism toward a positive science, the critique of the capitalist mode of production and the political historical myths of Leninist revolution. Well, I was technically correct if we was just looking at Marx and Lenin socialist thought, not actual socialist thought. Am I phone ring? Oh no. Combined with the persistent I already said that. I'm surprised he gave me a name on that essay. That was not a good one. The function of the alternative history of socialism is to obscure the obvious. The origins of socialist thought were not with the European proletariat, but the middle classes. So technically I was correct in terms of, okay. No, I'm not. Maybe let's read more before I even make assumptions. How about that? That's probably a better idea. I do talk to myself a lot. I have to say it out loud but for so long I was very quiet. But it's better for me to say things out loud so I can hear it and be like, you know? Because then I just start ruminating, jump into conclusions, assumptions, and hot tomato. It is not the working classes in Germany. Anyways, what was I saying? It is not the working classes in Germany who were the origin of socialist ideas. Socialist ideas were spread by a party of the intellectual elite who saw the proletarian masses as a possible instrument of social renewal. Indeed, the history of European socialism is dotted by a consistent opposition to the practical activity and consciousness of proletarian classes. Opposition. Well, yeah, I am technically correct in that sense because, like, how about people? Okay. No, I'm not. Girl, let me. Let me just keep going. As Marx and Engels themselves declared, the question is not what is the goal in envisaged. What type of envisage? Envisage? Envisaged? Past participle. Contemplate or conceive of as a possibility. For a time being by this or that member of the proletariat, or even by the proletariat as a whole. The question is, what is the proletariat, and what course of action will be forced historically to take in conformity with its own nature? That's the question. The intelligentsia was by far the stratum most likely to discern the course of action. Of course, Lenin, in substituting the Revolutionary Party for the conscious proletariat, agreed that Marx and Engels both theoretically and agreed with them in their theories and programs. That's what they said to me. Unfortunately, neither of them recalled any significant political purpose. Marx's warning in 1851 of the nature of their own class was, as it was demonstrated in Paris in 1848. One must not form the narrow-minded notion that the petty bourgeoisie, on principle, wishes to enforce an egoistic class interest. Rather, it believes the special conditions of its emancipation are the general conditions under which modern society can alone be saved and the class struggle avoided. Okay. The Democrat, because he represents the petty bourgeoisie, therefore a transition class in which the interests of two classes are simultaneously deadened, imagines himself elevated above class antagonism generally. Interesting. I really want to rewrite my notes now. As a class whose historical character included the ideological and administrative mediation of bourgeoisie rule and domination, the petite bourgeoisie tended to produce political and conceptual lattice works from which its inevitable derivative authority might extend and absorb the whole society. Being like, you outside the club and you trying to make a rule for everybody else because you have money. Petite bourgeoisie. That's what that's telling me right now. So as maybe I'm wrong. So as utilitarianism and functionalism had served a basis for the elements of the petite bourgeoisie, enveloped by bureaucracy, commerce, and the professions, that is, the mainstream of a capitalist social order, socialism became the pennant of those members for the petite bourgeoisie, appalled by the cruel lack of restraint and chaotically foreshortened vision of the bourgeoisie. We're at 4 minutes. Maybe I can keep going. How long is this one? Okay, not bad. From Beyouf to Marx, the curious historiography. Who's Boof? Please, phone. Oh, okay, I did spell that right. No, I didn't. How do you say his name? Pronunciation. Baboof. Baboof. From baboof. Okay. We're done. From Baboof to Marx, the curious historiography. The industrial working classes constituted a minority of the workers of England and France at the moment when modern socialism began to take its form. Indeed, such of the revolutionary agitation that marked this period was pushed forward by crowds dominated by artisans and shopkeepers. Albert Sobol, for instance, indicates that though the most powerful elements of the third estate of the French Revolutionary period was bourgeoisie, 2/3 of the order, that is, its Jacobin wing, were artisans, and shopkeepers. England and France, the latter as the most industrialized economy in continental Europe, which is France. Sometimes when I'm like reading and they say the latter, I'm like, why? But then I'm like, obviously, because English. I've been wanting to do that for so long, and I try not to do that when I record videos, but I couldn't hold it. Were still essentially agrarian societies when their working class movements assumed class-specific ideological and organizational forms in the 1830s. Okay, and 1840s. Even then, for example, Rood speaks of the importance of the survival of traditional ideas and values in movements that were to come close to power. Okay. The relationship between the social movements of the lower classes and the socialist intelligentsia was at least ambiguous. I don't know what we are, is what they're saying. Students of socialism generally argue that socialist traditions that would come to be closely identified with the industrial proletariat begins in 1795 with the conspiracy of equals in which Francois Knowles Baboof was so, I don't know his middle name and I'm sorry, was so prominent. G.D.H. Cole was with apparent approval notes that Baboof's conspiracy continued to be regarded by revolutionary socialists and is today regarded by communists as the first plain manifestation of the proletariat in revolutionary action, proclaiming from afar the breathe out. My sissy. Sorry, I apologize. Okay. Revolutionary Baboof's conspiracy. Okay. First plain manifestation of the proletariat in revolutionary action. Proclaiming from afar the new revolution which was destined to complete the work began in 1789. Lichtenstein quite naturally makes an identical remark before proceeding to the declaration of a direct legacy from Baboof to Lenin. Baboof and his associates appear as the precursors of 19th century radicals like Blanqui and at a remove of the Russian revolutionary populists of the 1860s and the 1870s, whose heritage was subsequently assumed by the Bolsheviks. Though Lichtenstein's lineage may be problematic, certain similarities are obvious between the movements at which the Baboofists and the Bolsheviks emerged from their respective revolutionary situations. I have cotton mouth, I apologize. Since it is the conspiracy of equals that is likely to be the lesser known, some details might be appropriate to demonstrate this apparent similarity. These are the examples to show the similarity between the Baboofists and the Bolsheviks. By 1794, this is year 2 of the French Republic, the most radical of the several bourgeoisie-dominated governments established in Paris had been overthrown, and its leading citizens, most prominently Robespierre, had been executed, exiled, or forced to flee to the countryside and beyond. The reaction that followed, oh my gosh, okay, I cannot believe that. Sorry, I just had a thought. Like, I read so much better when I actually have like a physical copy of stuff. When I have it on my phone or my computer, I wish I could do better, but it's okay. I can't dwell. Oh my god, my eyes are red. Kinda, can you see? Anyways, sorry, I'm up close and personal. The reaction that followed under the Directory had abolished the radical legislation and the egalitarian policies of the directed economy decreed the year before. The limitation of prices, the maximum, the taxation of the wealthy classes, national abstinence to the poor, free and compulsory education, the confiscation and distribution of the poor of immigré property were either repealed or discontinued in practice. That sounds like after Reconstruction. Maybe. We'll find out. We'll find out. Oh my god, the sun is so nice. Sorry. I'm texting my sister. As had been the case on several previous occasions since the aristocracy's power had been challenged, the revolutionary crowds of France's towns and cities and the peasants of the countryside began to suspect that the revolution was being betrayed. Ooh. This time, the traitors were the reactionary bourgeoisie, the members of the class whose wealth and power the revolution had already secured. The executions of the leaders of the Jacobin left wing of the convention removed from the Parisian Saint-Clotos. There's an E. Sans Clotes. Clotes. Yeah. It's going to be Clotes. Sans Clotes. Those elements, the Montagnard, which had been responsive to its demands. Those members of the left wing that had survived its repression had gone underground, frequently organizing themselves into secret societies and clubs. One such group was the remnant of the Union du Panthéon, the conspirators, while Dabouf and his comrades were negotiating in 1976 with the Jacobin underground. They were betrayed by a military associate. Ooh, that's tea. Excuse me. Cressel acting as a spy for the Directory. That's crazy. What if you found out your homies was... Oh, the trash. No, trash is Tuesday. What if you found out one of your homies was telling on you? Or giving military... No. Say you and your homies looking for each other. Out for each other. And you're like, I got you for backup. I got you. But then, in actuality, their backup is giving their work to your enemy. As their subsequent trial in year 5, 1797, the intent of the conspiracy of equals was revealed for the first time. They had projected a seizure of power by a small revolutionary group of leaders who were then to establish a revolutionary government based on their following among the Parisian local societies, with the intention of summoning as speedily as possible a national assembly to be elected under the democratic franchise of the abortive Constitution of 1793, which had never been allowed to come into force. Pending the bringing into action with this constitution, Babeuf and his followers proposed to establish a temporary dictatorship based mainly on the Paris workers, but they had no theory of revolution, much less a proletarian dictatorship, as more than an expedient of transition over a short period of time to a full democratic constitution based on manhood suffrage. They did, however, propose to proceed immediately to large measures of expropriation and redistribution of property, holding on a basis of communal appropriation and enjoyment of all goods. They had no plan. They was like, let's vibe, let's go. These are the basics. We don't got nothing. Based on the proposed to proceed immediately to large measures of expropriation and redistribution of property, holding on the basis of communal appropriation and enjoyment of all goods. Yeah. Such were the beginnings of the notion of the proletarian dictatorship in European socialism. It is a heritage that tends to confirm Marx's. Oh. So I was technically right in terms of occupying the land on college campuses. But I didn't explain it, so I feel like that video is best to take down because I didn't explain it correctly. I did hit a couple G's.